This is part 2 of Ranking of Loot Grind RPGs, Diablo 1. Some might say the original Loot Grind RPG, or at least the one who really popularized this format. Um, so, Diablo released December 31st, 1996, is a action RPG that it's an action RPG, but I would say it's kind of in the advent of the loot grind RPG. It was massively popular, um, and it kind of defined my early experiences with loot grind RPGs. So, yeah, Quinn's looking at me weird. Is it not 1996? I thought it was
I
December
thought it
31st.
was.
I
I
mean,
thought it was January 3rd, 1997 was what I
oh,
found.
did it? Maybe okay. Maybe it got like delayed from the 31st and then
I
became
mean,
the third.
according to Google, Colton's right. Its initial release date is December 31st, 1996.
Kind of weird to call it a 1996 game though if it came out like 3 hours before the next year.
Huh.
I Yeah, Quinn, I don't know, there might have been some weird stuff with dates and how that came out.
I need to double my sources, I guess. Cross reference.
Yeah, so where can we start with Diablo? I guess we can start with the story and kind of how the game works. So the premise of Diablo is you're in Tristram and you select a class, like you're either, and it's only got 3 classes, so rogue, warrior, sorcerer, and then you're tasked with going down into this dungeon below the church in the town of Tristram. And then you go through, it's 16 floors, and then the final boss at the end is Diablo himself. So I guess, what did you guys think about the story of Diablo?
I think for its time, it's probably as good as it's gonna get. I mean, it's a solid for I guess the mechanics of the game, right? Of just going down one level at a time. What can you really do?
Oh yeah,
Is what
like
I'm thinking about.
there's yeah, outside of games that were very much storytelling, I guess it's an action game, and how much storytelling was there in action games at the time? Yeah, I guess.
I guess because the thing is, like, you don't really get a lot of story in the game at all. I mean, the
No.
game, like at the end of every like, what do you? I don't want to call them levels. Like at the end of like every third or fourth floor, when you're getting ready to go into a new area, you'll always find a book that gives you a little bit of background information of what's going on.
Mhm.
Because it does talk about the Sin War. It does talk about how the lesser evils ousted uh, the prime evils, and then that's why Diablo is now on Earth, in Sanctuary, and then causing all of this ruckus in the cathedral.
I
But
guess we should say Diablo is a primeval, and he is the Lord of Terror.
yes,
Just
so yeah, but you don't really see. Yeah, but Diablo is the only one you see, and the other evils are only alluded to.
right.
You don't see them until Diablos 2 and 3.
Mhm.
Um,
But yeah, I don't
And
know.
no,
I feel like for what was going on, like you don't get a lot of context in the game.
yeah, and I don't. I wouldn't come to Diablo looking for a story if that's what you want. Like, it's not about the story at all, I don't think. It's more I would say more than the story, it's the atmosphere and context of it. Like the it's very dark and demonic. Um, and the enemies you fight, and like just the different kind of layers you go through. Like, you go through the dungeon below, then you go into the catacombs, then you go into caves, then you go into hell. Like, I think it's actually more the visual, like, atmosphere of the game and what that sets up. That's kind of the cool thing about it.
right. I was gonna say by virtue of being kind of a grinding, looting game, if you are going to keep playing it, there's only so much story you can, obviously show for. I mean, similar to like Monster Hunter.
Right.
We
Yeah.
completed the story pretty fast, but then you still have added, there's added quests, but it doesn't pertain to the formal story of the game.
Yeah.
So, to me, I never played it when it came out. Obviously, I'm too young, but
Honestly,
I
that might
think.
be fine because honestly, this playthrough kind of ruined my nostalgia for it.
But what I'm kind of gathering is because of how the times that it was created in, they were going for a certain feel and a certain, I don't know, unique
Well,
playing
yeah.
of
I
it,
mean,
right?
yeah, I think if we're looking at it at the time, it was amazing in a lot of ways. But to consider it now, we're like considering it against what's happened over the last 25 years. Um, yeah, there's a lot of things that when I played this game in the 90s did not stick out to me like when I played this now. Um, Not to say that I still didn't have some fun with it. Um, but yeah, so that's the story. So layout is 4 floors of each type, and obviously enemies get progressively harder. And it's a very straightforward game. There's not a lot of complex systems, I wouldn't say. It's basically just you have a level, you get points when you level up, and you pick up better and better gear. Um, and I would say that's the coolest thing about this game is the gear drops and upgrading your gear, and also the most important thing to progression. It feels like.
Yeah, that and leveling up, obviously, because you get to pick which stats you boost depending on your um, character type, right? So
Mhm.
rogue was, you were aiming usually more for dexterity and probably strength. Mage, or was it sorcerer? Sorry,
It's
Sorcerer,
sorcerer.
magic.
sorcerer.
Yeah.
More for magic, yeah, and then Colton was the tank, so lots of strength and
I
Right.
still
So
cannot believe I could not find a Book of Mana Shield, even by the time we beat the game. That was
right.
ridiculous.
So I guess next we can let's talk about the mechanics of this game, mechanics and kind of a systems layout. So I think this is where the game really fails modern day is when you start to get into the systems of the game and the combat mechanics. Now we can talk. Let's start with when you. So in Diablo, there is you can turn player friendly on or player friendly off. So if you have player friendly off, you wouldn't think that you could hurt your teammates. However, I think it's a glitch that's just they were never able to fix. Is that ranged attacks will hurt your teammates? Um, and with the controls are what do I want to say? It's like what is it that makes those controls so clunky? It's like that it's like only 8 directional maybe. So you have a very hard time moving from room to room, and you'll a lot of times when you're playing in this game, if you've played modern isometric games, you'll be trying to click on shit that's and your character is not walking through. And as I played over the 25, 30 hours, I got better at dealing with the intricacies of the Diablo movement system. But definitely when we started, I was like, why isn't this working? Why isn't this working? I think I'm clicking on the stairway, but you have to like click on the exact certain spot or else you like won't go down there and I'll just stand there and continue to get hit. Um so I think there's like a big clunkiness to the movement controls and a big clunkiness to like the way you can't like you can block your teammates from coming through a door. So a lot of times you'll end up just blocking your teammates into getting hit, and there's just you can't see your teammates' health bars. There's a spell in the game, spell of heal other, but you can't actually see the health bars of your teammates. So they would have to literally tell you to heal them.
Well, with the way the potion systems in the game work, like I feel like heal other is a pretty useless
Oh,
spell anyway.
oh, sure,
So
yeah, that's true. And then you can't stack potions either, so you just have to have a billion potions in your inventory.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
Yeah, I would say mechanics wise, since I was playing a rogue using a bow most of the time, having to constantly click to attack was
oh yeah, yeah.
kind of annoying because I don't know. I can see it with a melee weapon because you have a little more control, but
It still kind of sucks. You still got to like
a lovely
rapidly
bit,
click, and I wish I could just hold sometimes.
right?
Yeah.
Like you can
Yep.
hold the move, but you can't hold to attack, which was annoying. But
Mhm.
um, in terms of attacking, I thought it was as good as it was gonna get. I liked how they had that you could fire in direction, like without
Oh yeah,
needing to hit an enemy.
yep.
So you could take advantage of some enemies where their attack wouldn't hit you, but you could still be in range of them, so you could attack them while they're missing you, which was nice sometimes. But yeah, like you said, the clunkiness of walking around was took time to get used to for sure. Especially the doorways, like you said. Especially if there were certain times where we would all be trying to pile into one room because there's just a shit ton of enemies in there, but we just couldn't get through because either someone was stuck on one side or
Right,
I started shooting someone, or I don't know. There's just I would say it's more like quality of life type things
right.
that were the issue rather than mechanics. But
Yeah.
Yeah. As we mentioned numerous times during the gameplay, or at least I did, this is one of the most inconvenient games I have played in a while.
Yeah. And I like I like games that are like I don't know what the word is, but like challenging in a way or like I don't mind the inventory space thing in some cases. Um
Oh, inventory Tetris drove me nuts.
Now what I didn't like in this one is that you can't get any other storage besides your inventory. But uh yeah, and I guess for me like along with that of like our issues with the convenience things, I felt like there's some stuff off with the balancing, which I don't remember that playing it before, but like I feel like there's some clear like weird things with the balancing. And it to me it's like the differences from floor to floor can be weirdly vast, and the way that hits work in that game, you can run into situations where on one floor you're doing fine, you're competing with the monsters and you're fighting them and getting hits on them, to where you go to the next floor and you cannot hit them. And basically, a few of them are just hitting you so much that you don't even have a chance to swing because they just stun lock you over and over again. And I feel like you just get into these situations where you get grouped up on by enemies and get like stun locked, and it's
right,
like that felt weird and outdated to me the way it like worked. You had to like cheese around you had to like play a certain style to avoid that, which I don't remember feeling like that in Diablo 3 and Diablo 2, but I don't know, we'll see when we play Diablo 2. I Yeah, did that bother you guys at all, any of the
um,
See, the only time I can think of that happened to me was when I was fighting Hell Knights. Like,
well,
Hell Knights were the bane of my
I
existence.
guess you guys were playing ranged, right, too, predominantly.
Yeah, so
yeah,
we
Okay.
probably should have mentioned this at the beginning, but I was playing the Sorcerer. Quinn was playing the Rogue, which he already mentioned, and Colton, you were playing the Warrior.
right. I did. I do kind of notice what you're talking about, Colton. It almost kind of makes me think of like the way they developed the game was they set like an algorithm for how many
Yeah.
enemies spawn, and they're very liberal with it.
Well,
So
and then
like
like
I
yeah.
don't know.
Then the
Yeah,
special monsters, do they have it, the elite monsters? My god, they were so strong. You could dominate a whole floor and then just this elite monster with his pack just comes and you're get the fuck out of there, cuz the other thing that happened to me once was I got killed by a pack of elite monsters and it took me like a half hour to get my stuff back, because in Diablo when you get killed you drop all your stuff on the ground. So the big problem is if you drop all your stuff on the ground and you can't go back to get it, and you lose all your gear. I, Gear is so important in this game. Like what I realized is my gear was much more important than my leveling up. Like getting the next piece of strong gear, like getting my armor class up was so important. It seemed to be like the primary thing.
But could there be an argument that that's supposed to be a mechanic of the game
Oh yeah, no, I it might be. I'm just
to make
saying, in
you dungeon down further to
yeah,
get your stuff back
yeah,
and
and that's
start from
cool.
the
But
beginning?
what I'm saying is, in the cases then where you drop your gear because you like you're, it's like a place you're totally finding until you get like the RNG of this really strong elite monster showing up, and you literally can't hit him, and then you get surrounded by a pack, and then you take it down.
Gotcha, gotcha. So it's more
And
of
then
like a supreme increase in difficulty
yeah,
that
and that's
is not favorable.
and maybe somebody who likes it would say that's just how hardcore Diablo is. Stop being such a, you
Yeah,
know,
good, you scrub.
right. And in some ways, I don't I don't know. It's a thing where like I like some of it, but that part's just kind of like, okay, so what the hell do I do now?
Right.
um
See, but that was weird though, because it's like sometimes you died and you dropped your stuff. Other times you
yeah,
did and
right.
didn't.
Later in the
So
game we were playing and you guys weren't dropping your stuff. So I don't know if that was a glitch there where you weren't dropping your stuff,
It's probably a bug.
but
I don't know. That might be a bug. I could see it being a bug one way or the other, but I don't know for sure.
um yeah, other Diablo thoughts?
Um, I kind of want to talk about the town portals
Oh
because I feel
yeah.
like that was a very big part of the game, and I'm still not sure on how I feel about them because I
Uh,
think they made the game so much more easier than it would have been without them.
oh yeah.
But it also felt kind of like too easy at sometimes. I was like, oh, yeah, we can
Oh,
just leave and come back real
like
fast.
where you
I'm
can
like,
just
well,
portal
that's
out
nice.
in the middle
Yeah,
of a fight?
right.
Yeah.
Well, not even that, but like you could fight a wave of enemies, and then you realize you're out of potions, and you'd be like, okay, don't attract any more enemies. Don't get anybody else, excuse me, to come over here, and we can just portal, go repair our items, heal up, grab more potions, and come back and start again. To me, that like it almost felt a little too easy.
Yeah.
Like a better mechanic maybe would have been like, oh, you have to go a little further to try and find, oh, there's like a teleportation door here,
Mhm.
teleportation door over here, rather than being able to summon one yourself. But they were definitely very helpful. So I don't know. That's just kind of how I felt. I I enjoyed using them because they were
Yeah.
very helpful, like I said. But
I feel
I
like
don't
I
know.
could. I'm thinking about this in terms of some other games that I played, and I could see your argument. Like, if the game was designed in such a way that, like God, I no, I don't want to use that example, but it's almost like like the game is designed in a certain way. Like you're allowed this much healing, that's designed to go this much, to cover this much space before you reach
Right.
the next checkpoint.
Mhm.
But with this kind of being what it is, because I mean, like the town portals were definitely useful, but I feel like they by no means necessarily allowed you to escape everything. Because I
Right.
mean, just as what Colton pointed out, I mean, there were times where we definitely got caught off guard and just died with no
Well,
opportunities to
I
use the
mean,
portals at all.
and let's be honest, the hardest thing about Diablo 1 is trying to do things while things are attacking you, like change spells or get into your inventory and cast a town portal.
Right. And you can't use escape to get rid of anything.
Yeah, some of the most annoying things, like particularly playing a sorcerer, because you're relying so much on spells. But then there are times where you're sitting here and you're fighting two groups of enemies. One group of enemy is immune to lightning, and then
Mhm.
the other group of enemy is immune to fire. So it's like then you got to use lightning to clear one group of enemies, and then hurry up, switch to fire so you can eliminate the others. It's like really annoying.
Yeah. I think back to the town portal. I Now that you're saying more, I did think made me think about if you do use one to escape within a fight, you're gonna have to deal with all those enemies right away when you come back. So it kind of puts you at a pretty big disadvantage of you can use it to get away so you don't die, but you still have the consequences of that when you come back instantaneously. So
yeah, and I think the other point I would bring up too, though, is like with as much loot as it seems like you're constantly pulling to, I mean, like there are some times where it's like after only one encounter, I may still have potions left, but I have all this stuff that I either got to go identify or sell. So, but then of course, though, the loot seems inconsistent too, because there are some times where it's like after a couple of encounters, my inventory's stocked up, and then there are times it feels like I can clear an entire level and not and get very little gear.
Yeah. That's by nature though, right? I mean, I think that's a common loot grind thing.
I expected rarities to change though, which they really didn't, in my opinion. You
Yeah.
still got a cap on level 16. You're still getting caps that have 3 armor. I'm like, well, why'd I come down here?
Funny enough, the only time I think I got like the legendaries, like the gold equipment, was when I was playing by myself. I ended up getting 3 different gold items in like a single playthrough when I was playing the game by myself for a bit.
Oh, wow.
Maybe there's modifiers for groups of 2 and 3.
Maybe I have no idea, but that was the only time I encountered it, and I was kind of surprised because I kind of forgot they existed for a minute.
So, I guess despite these issues with the game, still, I kind of still had like that like loot grind like addiction a little bit, like where I was fighting things and getting gear, and I'm like, I gotta, and I couldn't beat them, so I got some other gear, and then I could beat them, and it was like that. The cycle was still working a little bit in this game, despite all that stuff. Like, and honestly, like playing solo, I think at this point for Diablo works better. But which kind of sucks because Diablo is a fun game to play multiplayer. The Diablo 3, but it's I still had some fun with that system. Like it still does hold up in some ways for me. But I don't think I'll go back and play the higher difficulties of this. I think I'd rather play Diablo 2 and Diablo 3. But I think looking at this from a historical perspective, when it came out, when I played this in the 1990, I probably played it in like 98, maybe 97, but it was so cool at that time and so different. And it's a lot of these things that, I'm saying it doesn't hold up today are things that people improved upon after playing this game and designing similar genre games. I think you can credit a lot of like the item rarity stuff back to Diablo in a way. But
Right, it was like a good starting point.
Yeah, I think if you really like loot grind RPGs, Diablo 1 playing like solo is like a cool like historical experience if you're somebody who really likes loot grind RPGs to go back and play Diablo 1. I would recommend doing it solo. It's just the some of the
some of the quirks of
inconveniences.
multiplayer are frustrating.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you want to play multiplayer, you have to download some shady VPN. So
yeah, I feel like that alone too is like it's a bit of a hassle to play Diablo 1 multiplayer nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah. Any more final thoughts, or should we rank it?
I think we can rank it. I guess one more thing. I think there should be similar to healing to get your mana back in the town. I think
Oh yeah,
somewhere where you can go fill up on mana instead of having to buy potions.
Add that to Adria so you can walk really far to get there.
Yeah, right. I was really expecting Adria to do that the first time I went to talk to her, but she doesn't. It's kind of disappointing.
It's the sorcerer attacks.
I guess so. So every time I went to town as a sorcerer with no mana, it was like a tax. I'd always have to spend an extra 150 on potions just to get a full mana potion.
So, Kudro, did you want to set the ground floor of this one for us? Because I'm pretty sure that's what's going to happen.
All right, let's see here. I mean, I don't hate this game. I know I've probably sounded a little bit down on it. It's just that the game is very inconvenient. There are things that drove me nuts about it. So I mean I would even detract a little bit from your point. Like I don't think this game is worth playing, even if you are a loot grind RPG fan. I feel like the only reason this game would be worthwhile is if you're like a Diablo super fan and you want to experience everything that the franchise has to offer.
Okay.
I feel like because I mean, as far as loot, like grindy games like this, where you're always just clearing levels, defeating enemies for just better and better loot. I think there are much better options out there. As I said, I think it's a D for me. I don't think this game is worth playing in 2022. It's yeah. I feel like this game can be passed over pretty easily.
Okay.
We all know why he ranked it so low, because it's made by Blizzard. Don't give them their $10.
This was
okay. If I was basing it solely on my feelings about Blizzard, this game would be an F. But as far as the game itself, I think this is a D. Skip it in 2022. It's not worth going back to it.
I think that's a fair statement.
Yeah. Should I go next?
If you want, sure.
Yeah, I'll go next, I guess. I'm gonna go with a D+. I think I did have some of that excitement to like want to keep going back in and grinding for that new loot and money and seeing what I could find, because I don't think I found everything by any means. So there's definitely, you can put a lot of time into this game for sure. But yeah, I think it's a good base for loot grinding, RPGs. Like it started it well. Inventory system kind of shit. Mechanics all right, but yeah, like Kudro said, I wouldn't waste your money on it. I think there's other Diablos that you can get the same experience with a better, or not same experience, the same, I guess, not gameplay, but like, I don't know.
If you play the other Diablos, you'll get a better experience.
Right, a better experience, but you'll still get the same. You get same but more with other Diablos, I think. And yeah, I mean, for $10, it's not too bad, honestly. But
just remember
it's still sound like a milkshake or something instead of Diablo.
Well, I think it's more the time spent, right? Like if you want to spend time playing it. I think that Diablo, I think it's amazing for what it created, like in terms of this genre, games like this. But I do agree with you guys in that so many of those mechanics have been improved upon so much in the last 25 years that going back and playing it now, you could easily say, yeah, this should be passed over. You don't need to play it. And I would agree, you don't need to play it. I still think if you're really into a lot of loot grind RPGs, it is an interesting, like, it was really interesting for me going back to it because I haven't played it in so long, and just kind of playing it and seeing that, like, the dawn of these type of games, and that it's a really interesting, like, historical experiment to do. But I'm not saying it's going to be a game you're going to be like, oh, this is amazing, but it's just an interesting historical experiment. I'm torn between C and D plus. I think I have to give it a D plus based on if the multiplayer inconveniences were cleaned up a little bit, I think I could comfortably go C. Like if you didn't damage your teammates when you shot them, at least, like, it's just so much of it now doesn't hold up. Though I still think it's a very important game historically for loot grind RPGs. The most. Well, maybe Fantasy Star, but we'll talk.
That's
It's a
just your
personal
bias, Colton.
So I think I'll go D plus as well for this. So let's pull out the overall list.
I had a quick question, Colton. Since
Yeah, what's up?
you played this originally in whatever 1990, whatever.
Uh-huh.
You remember where you picked up your copy from? Which
Uh,
store?
dude, I want to say it was like Best Buy
Okay.
or Staples, but I remember like
Staples.
I don't know how I was allowed to play this game. Like I must I don't remember how I like decided to get this game. I don't know if I saw it and thought it was cool, but I just got the game. Nobody questioned anybody at the checkout when this like 8-year-old or 9-year-old was, getting a copy of Diablo. I remember when I played this game, I was like 8 or 9 and I saw the butcher and I was like, that is terrifying. I ran away from the butcher. I remember like, because that's the first boss you run into. So I just like I'm playing, killing skeletons. You open this door and this butcher comes out, and I was like terrified, and I ran away. I got such a high level before I fought the butcher. I was so scared of fighting the butcher.
Yeah, your experience sounds very similar to mine when I first played it, though. And my brother had this game, and that was
Uh-huh.
how I played it. But I was still like 8 or 9 when I first played this game.
Yeah.
So like I was playing a rogue the first time I played it. So like I ended up getting leveling up at a few more floors when I first encountered after I encountered the butcher. And then
Uh-huh.
I just started running around the room that he's in and just
Yeah.
shooting him with arrows. Never once letting him get close.
Yeah, I credit this game with starting my love of like RPGs in general, I think, and loot
Mm.
games. I mean, I guess I played some Final Fantasy 6 on the Super Nintendo, but like really in like this like online multiplayer loot games, like this is the first time I ever played anything like that, and it was amazing. Um
Right.
so
Did it
anyway,
radicalize you though?
Diablo's the devil. It works there. All right, so now the question is, does Diablo go into the D tier, or do we say in terms of loot grind RPGs, Diablo deserves a bump for its historical relevance and it becomes a C in the loot grind tiers?
No, Colton, it
That's a
does
big
not.
qualifier from Colton there.
All right, so we're rating them as they stand in the
Yep.
modern day. I think we all feel Diablo should go in the D tier.
Colton, I swear I remember in episode 0, you specifically stated that we reserve the right to rank games based on current day standards.
Right,
I
reserve
feel
the
like you're
right.
backtracking on that a
No,
little bit right
I
now.
I do think we reserve the right, but we also reserve the right to say Diablo is just a really cool idea, and it deserves a lot.
So what I'm hearing is that we reserve the right to apply one standard or the other whenever it fancies us.
Yeah, that's how this show works. It's a
I,
ranking show.
I mean, at least you're honest.
um,
Colton's gonna be the first one at the Diablo exhibit at the Natural History Museum when it comes out.
I guess so.
no, there's people that are way more hardcore about Diablo than me. It's got, yeah. I mean, the Diablo 2 still has just a wild following, but anyways, uh Diablo is in the D tier for ranking of loot grind RPGs. See the entire list at srankmedia.com.